Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or maybe even good night, but welcome to Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. My name is Damien B. Donnelly. I am your host and producer, regardless of the day, the hour, or the year that you've decided to tune in on your preferred podcast platform. And they might be places like Spotify, Apple, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, Amazon Music, or maybe even YouTube. Wherever you are looking for your fix of poetry, Eat the Storms is here to deliver. And today I'm delighted to say that we have 3 returning guests and 1 new voice to the podcast. And all of them are celebrating new collections that have just been published or are on the way. As I've said in the last 2 episodes of this season, I am very excited to be looking back at the voices who first made the podcast what it is, who joined me in the first few seasons, but I'm also so thrilled to be able to welcome new voices to the podcast as we watch our community grow. Now, speaking of things growing and new things, The Storms, our printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, has just returned from the printers, and myself and my sub-editor Rona Green are pinching ourselves with excitement in terms of how it turned out. Next Saturday, the 1st of November, we will launch our 5th issue at Rafarnham Castle here in Dublin from 2:30 until 4:30. There are still some tickets left over on Eventbrite. Following that, on Sunday the 2nd of November, the podcast will return, but it will be a special episode as Eat the Storms will become the audio companion to our Journal of Poetry, Prose and Visual Arts. So we will have our featured poets and our featured prose writers who will all take part in that special bumper episode of the podcast. And following that, on Tuesday the 4th of November from 8 p.m. GMT, I'm delighted to say we will have our online launch. So our Zoom room will welcome all our national and international contributors over the course of 2 hours to read our way through this 5th storm. We have 89 stormers who are all waiting to burst onto your bookshelves, into your hands, and hopefully into your hearts with their words and visions. From tomorrow, the journal will be available to pre-order on the website eatthestorms.com, and very shortly we'll be in bookstores around the country, starting in Dublin with the Winding Stair bookshop and also Books Upstairs, and from then on we'll make our way around the country. But let's get back to this storm that's landed today on Sunday the 26th of October, and apologies if I sound like I'm going for a deep dive to find the heart of the ocean. I am still smothering from a lovely bout of man flu that's decided to settle down, nail itself in, despite many letters asking it very politely to find another accommodation. As I've already said, today on the podcast we have 4 poets who are all celebrating new collections. 3 of them have been on the podcast before, and 1 voice is new to the podcast, but certainly not a new voice to me. It's a poet that I've admired for a long time, and I'm delighted to welcome her to the podcast today. We will be settling down for this new voice in Northern Ireland. And then we will be heading over to London in the United Kingdom, Maryland in the United States, and finally we'll settle back in Ireland in the very familiar company of a Dublin-born poet, now resident in Cavan here in Ireland. And so from me here in Lusk in Fingal on the northern edge of Dublin, a wave away from the sea, it's time for me to introduce you to those voices. So, by this time, you know the drill. It's time to find yourself a cozy place to perch. If you've decided to take us along with you on an afternoon walk, make sure you wrap up and pull the headscarf tight. But wherever you are, I hope you have ensured that you have nibbles on hand, perhaps a whiskey, a gin or a tea to keep you hydrated. This is Eat the Storms, a poetry podcast. My name is Damien B. Donnelly, and I hope you enjoy the show. And my first guest on the podcast today is a new voice to Eat the Storms, but certainly not a new voice to me, and I'm sure to many of my listeners. I had the honour of chairing a panel that she took part in earlier this year at the Belfast Book Festival, when she joined me to talk about all things Irish Writer Centre, and that panel included the wonderful Sue Divan and the soon-to-be-published debut novelist Andrew Cunning. She is a Northern Irish poet who has published 3 collections: The Wind Stills to Listen from Arlen House, The Return of the Buffalo from Lagan Press, and Midnight Solo, also from Lagan Press. And her 4th collection, Under the Blue Seraphim, is on the way very soon, so make room in that bookshelf. She's written for TV, radio and theatre, had several short stories published, and is a part-time lecturer in creative writing for Ulster University. As a mentor and facilitator, she loves helping writers find their voice, and I am delighted to welcome her voice onto the podcast today for the first time, but hopefully not the last. It's always a pleasure to be in the company of Deirdre Cartmill.
Hi everyone, my name is Deirdre Cartmill, and I'm delighted to be here on Eat the Storms podcast. And thank you so much, Damien, for having me along. I'm going to read 4 poems today, and these are all poems from my 4th collection, Under the Blue Seraphim. And all these poems were inspired by my time as writer-in-residence for Belfast Cathedral, which is known locally as St Anne's Cathedral. Apostate. I kneel under a flag from someone else's war, left to hang until it crumbles into dust. I am cold to the bone, and then the sun filters in through the faces of the prophets, and I follow the shafts of light they have laid out for me, sensing the ghosts who walk with me. The dust I will return to, the light that draws me. War wound. It's not the moment when I clean the blood and mud from your chest, cauterize the wound, pull the edges of the fault line in your flesh back together and stitch skin to skin as the bombs fall around us. But the moment when your blood spills over the edge of the stretcher and you scream for your mum and I take your hand and you squeeze back hard and you know for as long as you're breathing, I won't let go. Under the Blue Seraphim. They come to write a prayer for Ukraine, to rest for a moment, to escape the rain, to read the name of their child, the date when they whispered I love you and let them go. I never got to give you a name, but I come to sit in the quiet, to tilt my head back and gaze at the blue seraphim, who sing Holy, Holy, Holy Lord, as the sun pours through the Lion and the Lamb and lights a path forward. And I'm just going to finish with a poem in memory of my mum. Leaf. A yellow leaf blows in the wind, and in its rustle I hear you whisper, I too will float in some surprising place. I will sneak up on you in a quiet moment. You'll catch sight of me from the corner of your eye, and like a breath in the wind, I will be gone again before you blink your eyes open.
Next up, we have a returning guest here on the podcast, and I'm delighted to say that today she's joining us to read from her new collection, Sad Boys Are Not My Kink, published by Donnelly Press. Aside from being head of English at a secondary school in London, she still finds the time to have her work appearing in places like Prototype 6, the Rialto, Bad Lilies, the North, and many more. In 2024, Black Cap Press published Immediately After and Then Later, which she followed with I Get Lost Everywhere, You Know This Now, published by Sallow Press, and earlier this year she was the co-author of Art Sundays. Luke Kennard said of her new collection that it's always a thrill to discover poetry like this, deathly serious and deeply funny, courageously honest on love, longing, sex and death, the imagination intrinsic to the real. Dear listeners, it's time for the reader to choose how it all ends in the always excellent company of Galia Admoni.
Hello, this is Galia. Thanks so much for having me back on Eat the Storms. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm going to read from the first cycle of poems in my new collection, Sad Boys Are Not My Kink, which is published by Donnelly Press on the 16th of October. This cycle is a choose-your-own adventure, which means you'll only be hearing one possible pathway today. Unravelling, verb, undoing, investigating, solving or explaining something complicated or puzzling. 1. You stand in front of the mirror at home, adjusting your shirt. It's an old one you've had since before you met him. The shirt, the situation, feels like one long unravelling. October and the sudden remembering pulls on your victories like threads unravelling what you thought was strong. The mirror shows you angles you hadn't seen before, and now you can't unsee them. You obsessively reread your diary from the hymn times, pages where you thought you could find clarity. You have only recently refound the diary because of the news, and since then you read it over and over. You scan it into your phone, page by page, so you can access it at any time. Then, December, and a friend mentions you as a person of interest to a documentary filmmaker who calls you several times and wants to reassure you that what they're making is not just going to be a film about him like the last, but also about the wider culture of the time. The news, the conversations, they all make the diary heavier, but you can't let it go. Written word and weight exist as proof of the conceptual idea of him. Suffix. Sometimes you're secretly pleased he's not real to you anymore, except he is. Do you continue to pull at the threads, or do you leave it alone? Pull at the threads, turn to 14. Leave it alone, turn to 7. "14. It sits on your bedside table like a threat. The paper crackles like argument, like something you were never supposed to say. Do you regret it, it asks, but you already know the answer. The words won't fix anything. This is not a thing that can be methodically deconstructed. But words make a place for the truth to sink in, at least. They are seafoam, turn to 4. Redacted, turn to 9. 4. Seafoam, noun, created by agitation of dissolved organic matter and churned up by waves and wind. You stand in a living room, the walls filled with pictures that ask you to feel something, to create meaning where none exists. You've always believed that art should be without the burden of meaning, but he is looking at you for acknowledgement of his intelligence. You nod and say nothing. He says it feels like home. You think it feels like entering a film set where the cameras are already rolling. You nod and say nothing. Something is too graphic, is redacted here. An incident report is misfiled in your memory. The flat is always filled with expectation. If you go again, you'll regret it. Go again and again, turn to 5. Maybe just once, turn to 15. "15. The man is a wolf who is a man who is actually a wolf. You listen for hunger in his moans. You make everything worse this way. His kiss tastes apathy. Stay, turn to 3. Leave, turn to 12. "12. You are drawn to the ones that can't look you in the eye, and there are plenty to choose from if you're not picky. You have a talent for performing your happiness. You want to forget him, so you see him everywhere. Pretend you haven't made a mistake. Turn to 2. Try to fix your mistake. Turn to 10. 2. Then Friday, and a boy opposite you in the library picks up a book and whispers to it, "Why are you being so secretive? Let me read you." And it makes you want to cry. You cry. You don't ever stop crying. Weeks pass. You obsessively research youth hostels, fancy hotels, places to escape, then immediately close all the browser windows and wash your hair furiously instead. You buy an expensive hairband you'll never wear. Months pass. C starts sending you updates whenever he is in the news, and you wonder if you have seemed more all right than you should have. You respond exclusively in emojis whenever this happens, and then spend hours wondering whether you picked the right one. You keep trying to edit yourself, like a poem. It won't work. Turn to 16. Lacuna, noun, an unfilled space. You start at the point of loss. The choices you made have led you here, but there's only one way forward now. You wish you could map the places where you like to be touched, but you don't remember anymore. You wonder why no one has ever thought to ordnance survey your body, cross-hatch shade into valleys or rivulets of skin. You wish you had set aside a compass, but there are no coordinates to write out. Memories concatenate. You think, why make something to destroy it? You take a long, hard look in the mirror. You see the whole mechanism, but not its component parts. You wonder how many others have stood here, staring at the same ruin, trying to make sense of their own broken stories. One last choice in the quiet of the night, but not your own. Self. Undressed of gravity, I floated away. At midnight on New Year's Eve, Charlotte and I each eat 12 grapes while sitting under the dining table. 1, because I'm jealous of my friends' unhappy marriages. 2, I dread another year without the first thrill of knowing what a heart is capable of. The ache of sleepless 4 a.m. next to someone, wondering who loves more and will love longest. 3, I can't conceive of that 4 a.m. any more than I can remember what it feels like to be kissed, or dry up dishes someone else has washed. 4, I am resolute in not wishing out loud, keeping the spell intact. 5, grapes are silent hopes. No more, my life doesn't look like I thought it would by now. 6, 1 grape is rotten. I eat it anyway. 7, by 12:05 we've shuffled wordlessly to our beds for shame because we should be more than this. 8, I think all the hours between 12 and 4 a.m. I think too much. 9, 10, eventually my dreams are vines, but where the grapes should be are shriveled hearts, which is better than the grapes for dramatic purposes. There's a swivel chair dizziness to the dream world, and my dream self thinks amusedly about the way that movement is strangely tangible in the dream world, because although I've never been on a roller coaster, I've seen enough of them to know how one might feel. 11, at the other end of the dream, someone distant and impatient repeats a refrain of, "Strip the leaves off the vines for me, for me, for me." 12, I wake with the smell of rotting fruit in my nostrils. Sad boys are not my kink, but in the dream, sad boy is wearing a suit made entirely of post-it notes that say things like, "We blamed youth and distance. I think I was just scared of having something real. I wish we had tried again. You were so easy to love and had absolutely no idea. I leave my phone on at night in case you decide you need me. I still leave a space for you in the bed. I wish you were here. I hope you think about me once in a while." And sad boy is well hidden beneath them all like a piece of rice under the sofa. And he has never looked sexier.
Earlier this year, the Otherworldly Alien Buddha Press published the 7th collection of my next guest on the podcast today, This Much Very, and I'm delighted to welcome him back to the podcast today. His poems have appeared recently in places like Poetry South, Iowa Review, Poetry Scotland and the Contemporary American Voices, and he's been nominated for several Pushcart Prizes and Best of the Net Awards. Based in Maryland in the United States of America, he founded the Voices of Woodlawn, a program of poetry, music and art that explores America's tragic history and legacy of slavery. And with thanks to the support from art groups and food banks, as well as the United Nations and Feed the Children, he created Poetry X Hunger, an initiative that is bringing the world of poets to the anti-hunger cause. You can find out more about this at www.poetryxhunger.com, but he will also tell you a little bit more today in between the readings. And now it's time to settle back in the always sensational company of Hiram Larew.
Hi, I'm Hiram Larew from Maryland, USA, and I want to thank Damien for his magic, and to you, every listener, for your willing ears. I'd like to read 4 poems with a short break in between for a public service announcement. The first poem is about how I tend to face the current headlines. I have to imagine beyond those headlines. In fact, I have to look above the headlines. This poem appeared in Right Now Lit, and it's a love poem to the moon. It's titled To the Limit. Someone asks what I would fight for. Well, I'd fight for the moon in a heartbeat, with its halo of wisdom, its cloud cover of guess, and its wish to, even its merely. I'd march for its glowing, and I'd defend the moon with longings, with anything I could muster, no limits, to keep it up over, for harvests or phases, even for no one. Then, if allowed to, I'd rejoice in its quiet apart from, that always wins me, for as long as what matters lets me. The moon's mix of far away, but right there, all gathered around. And the next poem appeared in Live Encounters. It's about the wonder of elder years and their amazing befuddlement. It's titled Country Stores. I live in meanwhile, my time frays with its undoing. My breath slantly sighs, and these turning pages just suggest me. I hide in the midst of, and peek through jaunts or schemes. My sacks are packed full of longed for. My train whistles, and I travel towards wishing on halfway between. Better said, I love country stores that sell that smell of then or just so. And the next poem appeared in Foul Feathered Review. It's all about my love affair with barns. It's titled Galore. Can a barn float? Oh, I think so, especially when branches shade its doors and birds day galore me up alongside it. Can a barn dream like me? Surely it can, because its tin roof has so much fun with these breezes or once agains. Can a barn love? Indeed, it does, even better than I do, with its heart that sings the bees, and like hope, through years and years of straw, teases time with corners. And here's a public service announcement. I hope you'll join us as we turn poetry into food for the hungry. Well, what do I mean? Well, Poetry X Hunger is rousing poets from around the world to use their talents to fight hunger by raising awareness about hunger and to raise funds to support anti-hunger groups. So check us out at poetryxhunger.com. That's poetry, the letter X, hunger, all one phrase, poetryxhunger.com. And the last poem appeared in Letters from Camp Rehoboth. It's about those young, wandering souls. It's titled Go Rouse James. If every day, in fact, if every minute of every day from now on is supposed to be a live life fully sort of shock, a kind of emergency of learning, or a one chance only kind of candy, then go rouse James. He'd want to be here. For instance, he'd want to look out at those green branches, because even as hot and as nervous as they must be, they're still floating on air. And he'd know why and tell us. James was the first person around here who got those kind of glasses. And when he votes, he whistles. And when he smooches, ice cubes swirl like they're on another planet. James is the kind of person you watch because he believes in movies for as long as it takes. And he'll roam all over outside long before breakfast just to listen. Thanks so much. Take care.
And my final guest on the podcast today is also celebrating a new collection which arrived here in the post on the week of my 50th birthday, which made the celebrations all the more special. As I said, throughout this series we are celebrating guests who have appeared in the first, second and third seasons of Eat the Storms, and so it's a joy to welcome this guest back, who has long been a frequent visitor on the podcast and also has been a true stormer since our inaugural issue. We met on front of an 18th century temple on a very memorable day in 2021 to celebrate the Storms Journal and our first launch. With work appearing in places like Poet Head, Pandemic, UCD Archives, Poetry Ireland's Poetry Town Pocket Poems booklet and the Irish Times. Her work has also been shared on other podcasts, including Susan Richardson's beautiful 1000 Shades of Green and Wave 22 of I Am, curated by Mark Anthony Owen. Her previous two collections, Living with Love and its follow-up, Time, published in collaboration with photographer Julie Corcoran, and this little black book of a new collection, Out There, all offer intimate explorations of life's beauty and complexity. This is the fearless dragon slayer of poetry herself, my dear friend, Fidel Hogan Walsh.
It's absolutely wonderful to be back with the Storms family again. Thank you, Damien, for the invite. I just love it. The poems I'm reading for you are from my new collection, Out There, that had its launch on the 6th of September. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Atoms of Love. We are the moment. Destinies of hope entwined in the belief of us. And for the briefest of moments, we collided into existence. When our stars fell from the sky to die, miracle dust of us sprinkled the universe. Infinite love, a lifetime in the history of Earth's greatest love story. The next one I'm going to read is called The Omen of Many Names. They call you death. You are new beginnings, a symbol of good and bad luck. The trickster, the otherworldly messenger, a creature of spirituality, covered in the darkest of plumage. Ancient wildlings of power, patience and perseverance. In Mother Nature's ever-changing landscape, you are the season of myth. They call you Crow, the omen of many names. The next poem is called Around 3 a.m. I hear the spokes whirring in the stillness of night, and a breath from a worn-out saddle. Handlebars settle against the wall. My heart trembles when your cobweb strands cling, and you echo like an invisible haunting forever in my ribcage. A key in the lock turns, old floorboards creak, and in you stroll with that incurable romantic grin. When the wheels of reality are but a blur, and travel moves faster than time, I will always love you around 3 a.m. The next one is called You Call Out My Name. Darkness holds serenity in the palm of its hand, scattering mind and body to those howling winds. My landscape bathes in your spiritual, sacred waters. This soul of mine will rest where the anchors call. Ackle, light of 1,000 centuries, I am yours. So the last one I'm going to read now for you is called Out There, which is in the book called Out There. Humanity, Earth, Divine, Universe. In a celestial light, a wonder of being human. Miniature moments, a story of life, complexities of living death, a light of existence, the lure of a star twinkling and falling, a oneness of destiny and chance, an electrifying strangeness, a constellation's curiosity with eternity. Wise winds whisper, a time before and of a time after. And the night sky, a chandelier of rapture.
And so, as is custom, before I leave you, I'm going to read you a few poems of my own. Now, as I mentioned in the last 2 episodes, the Hedgehog Poetry Press and Mark Davidson have decided to close. And the Hedgehog Poetry Press is the reason that we're here, because they published my debut pamphlet, Eat the Storms, way back during COVID in the summer of 2020. And because of that, because the fact that we were in lockdown, I decided that the only way I could share my poetry was by setting up a podcast. And so 10 seasons later, we're still here, but with a much larger community than we started with. And so it is a huge thank you to Mark Davidson, the curator of the Hedgehog Poetry Press, for putting this all together and putting me on my poetic journey. So the first poem I'm going to read is from my debut full collection, which Mark published in the summer of 2022, and it was called Enough, and this is called Birdsong. And the reason I've selected these 2 poems is because this season, as I've said on the podcast, we are celebrating the voices that started out with us, and these are 2 poems about perhaps the voices that maybe we started out with, but perhaps are not around anymore. So this first one is called Birdsong, and it's from my debut collection, Enough. Birdsong. I stroll in soft sundown across gated garden, so far removed that not even a simple rumble of your name can recall you. I consider going in to where the light looks neat and named, but a bird calls from a foreign place, from a branch I cannot see. Sight comes in second after his song, soft and slow and cycling back on itself like time, tide and the swift recoil of your touch. Time was never to be our lover, nor the light to be a signal, nor a name to be something to define us. Sight comes in second. I move in ever-decreasing circles, as fatefully distant moon, itself ever revolving, comes out to feed. We eat what we can, fuck till we're full. Birds sing songs from other shores, and only when lost do we permit ourselves to stop, think, and finally ask the meaning. And the last poem I'm going to read is from my most recent collection, my second full collection of poetry, Back From Away, which was published by Tourist Press last year. A huge thank you to head of Tourist Press, Liz McSkeen, a poet and novelist herself, whose new book just came out last month, so huge congratulations to Liz. This is called The Scent of Something That Never Existed. Sometimes I smell you in places you've never been. Traces of suggestions since passed from those knees, knocking to this time here that space has brought down around us. an us that was never a we. Never a witness to any concession above those knees. Desire is deathly. Memory is stronger than science. We were quarks. Subatomic particles, senseless, shifting. We were not made of that scent. I now recall that this mind has made into actual elements. That this moment here, with all its senseless incense comprised of all our nothingness, has turned into a nucleus, and that nonsense into an atom that never existed. Scent is not to be trusted. I am not a chemist, botanist, aromacologist. I cannot remember your name, the colour of your eyes. A lie, they were blue when I first staggered under that desire to know drowning. The taste of your breath. The invisible particles I know I leaned in often to catch, and yet somehow I catch your scent here in a place we've never been, divided by a billion atoms and 2 decades that have built up and broken down along the way. Somewhere there remains an imprint in the fabric of time, a brief outline of our knees. Yours pressed against mine, or mine against yours, somewhere. My nose leans out to catch all you'd inhaled of the stage, and my lips opening up to taste the particles that were never really placed together. Shimmers only. Yours blue and mine growing out of green, unaware of our own flames, catching spotlights on the stone-cold streets of Paris, not even aware of our own names. Touching all and everything, and forgetting so much in the excitement of the next burst coming our way. I smell you in places we never existed. Poetic peeps and gentle persons, in-betweeners and nonconformers, genders all and genders equal. We've reached the end of this 3rd episode of Season 10 of Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. My name is Damien B. Donnelly. I've been your host and producer, and thank you so much for tuning in today, tomorrow, yesterday, next year, last year, to listen to the magnificent 4 voices of my star guests on the show today. And they have been Fidel Hogan Walsh, Hiram Larew, Galia Admoni, and Deirdre Cartmill. As always, for details on all of my guests, you can head on over to eatthestorms.com, click on the podcast section called Listen to the Podcast, and there you'll find a blog post for every episode, including photos, bios, social media handles and website links, so you can find, follow and be fantastic fans to all of my guests on the show today. And there will also be a link to Hiram's Poetry X Hunger. And of course, while not pushing it too much, while you're over there, you'll also find our shop. And there, from tomorrow onwards, you can purchase copies of The Storms, our printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts, issue 5, which launches next Saturday. So once again, thank you all so much for tuning in on platforms like Spotify, Apple, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, iTunes, Amazon Music, or maybe even YouTube. I hope you will tune in again next Sunday when we'll have our very special episode to accompany the Storms Journal. In the meantime, I wish you all a fantastically frightful Halloween with copious amounts of rings and whiskey-soaked barn bracks, and perhaps make sure you don't break a tooth while bobbing for apples. My name is Damien B. Donnelly. This has been Eat the Storms, a poetry podcast, and until next time, as always, stay bloody poetic.